Hey, everybody. Steve and I have over 20 years of experience as therapists and a whole lot longer than that as addicts in long-term successful recovery. We know better than anyone what works and what doesn't to break out of porn and sex addiction, to heal betrayal trauma, and to reclaim your relationship.
And we've gone ahead and poured all of our personal and professional recovery and healing experience into a first-of-its-kind program for addicts, spouses, and couples. We call it Dare to Connect.
At least 4 times every week, we engage with you in real time, in the trenches, giving you the knowledge and tools to take back your life and relationship.
Whatever else you guys have done on your journey for healing and recovery, we guarantee you have never done anything like this.
We've made all the mistakes so you don't have to. Please don't reinvent the wheel.
Guys, come on, let's get real. Tomorrow never really comes. Don't wait one more day to change. Claim your free 2-week trial today at daretoconnectnow.com. Hey, everybody. I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared podcast.
Hey, everybody. Mark and Steve on the PBSE podcast. This is episode 150.
Wow, 150.
This is 150. Wow. And still going strong. And we, of course, love all of you and appreciate you because you make all this possible.
Coming up on 3 years, man. Couple of weeks.
I think it is. Yeah. In a couple of weeks.
To celebrate.
Gosh. Yeah. Wow.
I know. Absolutely wild.
And one of you wrote in about a situation that you're experiencing. We wanted to address it on this podcast today. It was a really raw and real entry that was sent to us, pretty long, so we're just going to summarize it. But basically, it's a woman who's been in a relationship with a partner for 3 years, and recently he came to her and he disclosed that he's involved with pornography, and he had kept that a secret during their whole relationship. Mm-hmm. And he was sincere. He really felt good about the fact that he had been honest and had divulged that to her, and that he promised her that he was going to start working on it. He was going to do things about it. But then a short time after, his attitude changed. He kind of did a 180-degree turn and suddenly started saying that pornography isn't a problem, that it can actually be healthy, that she's really the problem in all of this. And so his whole attitude turned around and went in an opposite direction, of course, leaving her very confused and, very, very betrayed and feeling extremely gaslighted. And then going on to explain that they've actually been in couples therapy, and the therapist there also reinforced his position that this is healthy. There's really nothing wrong with it by itself, that it's other issues. And so she's just really, her world is spinning because of all of this. And so she asks us a couple of questions at the end of sharing all that with us. And she says, what do you do as the partner of someone who is not accepted or fully acknowledged if they have a problem? Is there anything that I can do? And the second question, is it possible to enter into a successful recovery from porn addiction without believing in God? She also, I failed to mention that they both had religious upbringings, but are not currently involved in any kind of a faith. And belief in God is not something that's a centerpiece of their lives. Yeah. So that's why she asked that question as well.
Okay. Well, and these are great questions. And I think that in answering these questions, we're probably going to do a bonus prize here a little bit. And on top of that, we'll give some thoughts about really how to tackle maybe the more root of the problem as well, because
Yes.
these are both good questions, but they may not be the full, real answer when it comes to the actual problem. So I guess let's start off with these tertiary questions first, the ones that she asked, and then we can kind of dive into it. What do you do as a partner of someone who has not accepted or fully acknowledged if they have a problem? Is there anything that I can do? I would say that the answer to that is absolutely yes, while at the same time having to really give away or acknowledge that your sphere of influence is limited, right? To the other person taking whatever choices or actions they're willing to take in terms of acknowledging things on their end. Mark and I have a strong background, not just, we specialize in working with sexual compulsion and betrayal trauma and those kinds of things, but we both have worked for years and years in substance abuse, other forms of addiction. We've spent a lot of time doing that. And when you're working with anyone dealing with any addiction, really, um, at the end of the day, there are lots of different ways to go about it. Sometimes people organize, formal interventions where they get the whole family together and, you have a problem and here are all the reasons why, and whatever the case may be. Those were kind of a fad for a while, and there's lots of different ways of doing that. But at the end of the day, the only way you can really confront somebody who is struggling is to try to approach them when they are at their most vulnerable, meaning that they're most open to change. And oftentimes that can be shortly after a relapse or when they're experiencing the consequences of it. Although it's not required, but then you do what we say, which is hold up a mirror to them, and you talk very transparently, I think, about two things. The first are the ways in which this is impacting you and or the relationship that you have with the person. And you may lead out with that depending on the dynamic, and you don't hold back. The key to that is to be vulnerable and detailed without becoming toxic or attacking, right? You need to know exactly A, how much I love you and care about you. B, because I love you and care about you, I need to be totally honest with you and transparent and tell you, exactly the impact that you using porn is having on me and how I feel like it's impacting our relationship. And then you also do the same thing by from my perspective, just on the outside looking in, I'm concerned because I feel like it's impacting you in these ways. And again, you get very descriptive about that. You get detailed, you use examples, but you do that from a place of not trying to determine their reality for them. The best way to elicit the possibility of somebody responding to that is never through, hey, you're crappy at X and let me tell you why. It's to be able to say, this is my truth in terms of how this is impacting me, right? How this is influencing me, how this is coming across, what effect this is having. But that does come with that risk of letting go, right, of the outcome and recognizing that at the end of the day, a partner does have sovereignty when it comes to how they will respond. But the one thing that you don't want to do, that's a good thing to say, is when we were talking about this on our Dare to Connect program, actually, for addicts, spouses, and couples last week. We can tell you, Mark and I both as addicts, that when it came to our spouses sharing with us, it was so much better when our spouses would get pissed or angry than when they would get vulnerable and show their pain on full display in a vulnerable way, because that would kind of cut to the core. Having my spouse angry or get toxic with me in many ways as an addict gave Mark an out, right? To not have to fully take on those feelings and that ultimate expression. And it makes sense why partners oftentimes approach with anger. Lots of reasons we can't cover today for sake of time. But the more vulnerable and open you can be with that and just put that on full display, the best chance you have of making positive ground there.
Yeah, because there's a lot of voices out there that try to get into these big giant debates. What is pornography? What isn't pornography? Is it harmful? Is it healthy? Right? Is it an addiction? Is it not? Is this just a religious issue? Or right in the debate and the arguments go on and on and on. And you'll notice in our podcast and the way Steve and I approach it, we don't get into any of those issues. Why? Because this really comes down to, what does this mean for you as an individual and for
And
you
for your
as
relationship.
as a coupleship?
Yeah.
That's what matters, right? It's why our other in-depth program is called Dare to Connect. And so, does pornography, being in the relationship, is it a connecting thing? Do you feel more connected? Do you feel more oneness? Do you feel more cherished, appreciated, exclusive? Do you feel more loyalty? Right? What are the results about the impact it's having on the individual and the relationship? That's what we care about.
Yes.
That's the place to focus on. I would, when she shared that, this guy had come forward and was very sincere and humble and put it out on the table and was willing to work, and then he did the 180-degree turnaround, I recognized that immediately. I did that
Yeah.
lots and lots of times. I kind of call it, coming to yourself, realizing your true higher self, all the integrated parts of yourself that make you whole and put you on a path, of a life that, that is rich and full of the things you really desire. You come to all of that and you realize, hey, this pornography activity I'm involved with, it's really not harmonizing with who I think I really am and what I really want out of my life. There's some dissonance here, and I'm feeling it, and I'm feeling what it's doing to my relationship, and so I want to change. And if you're not careful, if you don't jump in with both feet into that initial recovery process and surround yourself with support and start moving forward, that compulsive, reward seeking, pain avoiding part of your brain will talk you out of that new reality really quickly. It's actually quite shocking how much you can reverse that position in so short a time.
Yeah.
I would suspect he probably had gone, who knows, searching for things on the internet about what others thought about it. And I'll have guys early in recovery say, well, I've read about couples that watch pornography together and they have an incredible relationship. They bring up all of these examples, and the counselors who say that it's a healthy, awesome thing. So he probably had a lot of those influences, and now he's kind of headed off in another direction, and she's sort of standing there holding the bag, wondering, what do I
Yeah.
do now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, these, at the end of, Mark said that so well. At the end of the day, whether you're I mean, I would say as again, as in our experience as addicts, nobody at the end of the day could make Mark and I see that we had an issue, right? The only way that came about is as we watched the external consequences just continue to mount, right? Because you can call it a problem or a knot or whatever, but there's no denying at the end of the day the implications and how that's impacting one's own life if one gets honest with oneself. And is this taking me closer to the person that I want to become or further away? Right. Um, I I would say that one of the unfortunate things that we see with spouses oftentimes, and can pick up some of this in the questions that were asked by this partner, is sometimes we get pulled into this idea that in order for my truth to be valid, I need, I wouldn't say acknowledgement, but maybe validation by my partner that it is that in order for it to be valid, right? In order for pornography to be a problem for me, I need them to be on board with that. In order for it to be a problem for the relationship, we both have to agree about that. In order for, fill in the blank with whatever. And the reality is at the end of the day is you have, connection always happens from the top down. And each of us has to decide, what do I need in a relationship in order for it to be healthy? Right? Your partner gets to decide that, but you as a spouse get to decide that. And we can call it an addiction or a compulsion or not, and you can get off in the weeds about that all day. But at the end of the day, what does that all mean? It means that, I have to decide, am I is this path one that I'm choosing, right? Is this relationship authentic for me given these behaviors? Is this something I'm willing to go along with and not? And you're at a Well, I don't know if we're going to call them an addict partner, right? We would argue that that's the term that we would use,
We
but
don't
they
know.
have to decide that same thing. And that's really scary in a relationship, right? Because it's always scary when we come across issues that, they're where they are significant enough that, if we can't find some sort of a consensus on in terms of the direction that we're going, that may mean that the relationship may not work. Right. And it's always scary to have to face that or to look at that. But at the end of the day, when it's one of those concepts where it's, much easier to understand than it is to implement, one has to just be really honest with oneself. And I mean, if I'm this partner was in my office or Mark's office, one of the things that we'd be saying is if he at the end of the day is bound to determine, and it doesn't sound like he is necessarily, but if he is bound to determine to not change, if he's not willing to acknowledge as an issue, if he's not willing to make any sort of changes or move directions, then the question for you becomes scarily simple. Is that something that I can live with and be happy with or not? And is that authentic for me? Right? And when I look at all the positive components of this relationship and all the ones that aren't desirable, do I still find myself wanting to choose this? At the end of the day, I have to decide.
Yeah.
That's hard. Simple but hard.
Well, and I'll tell you what happened for me. I mean, there's also the question, can you be in recovery if you don't believe in God?
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
answer to that is absolutely you can.
for sure.
Right? There are many now. Do you need to have some sort of something that is higher, stronger, more expansive than you by yourself isolated? Yeah, you do need that to be in recovery. But for a lot of people, that's, for example, the recovery group, and that higher power they can turn to becomes the group consciousness. I have clients I've worked with where they, for them, it's been nature, to go off in nature to feel, the higher feelings and powers. Others, it's universal love. There's lots and lots of ways to come at that. So we got to be careful to not get caught up in, recovery is this whole God thing. That's not true. It isn't
No, absolutely not.
not what it is at all.
I have several clients I work with that don't reference from with a higher power at all.
Yeah.
They're choosing recovery because they see the symptomology and the problems in their life due to the unwanted behavior, right? And you can again get caught up in the semantics. And addicts, to be fair, love to argue this kind of stuff because it's distracting to the bigger argument all day. Is an addiction? Is it not? What are we calling it? You can get into that all day long, but at the end of the day, the thing that's inescapable is again the implications and the consequences. When I'm working with a guy who meets kind of the profile of what this woman is describing, I don't have an issue and I don't have a problem and I don't know what her deal is and whatever. I mean, that's very much how the conversation looks. Look, man, I'm not even here to try to, I'll tell you all day long if you want my professional opinion, what's going on here. But if you're not willing to hear that, that's fine. But the thing that you can't avoid is that, like it or not, this is devastating your partner at the end of the day. It's betraying trust. It's hurting the relationship. It's destroying intimacy, both physically and emotionally. And that is the reality of the situation. So again, it's kind of a similar conversation with them. So you have to, at the end of the day, come to reconcile with yourself. Is that a problem for you or not? And I'm not here to convince you of that or not convince you of that or whatever. You have to decide, has this, because that's how it happened for Mark and I. I mean, I wish I was one of those mythical guys that you sometimes hear about, like the white rabbit of recovery that one day just wakes up and is like, oh my gosh, I just need to change this. And not because of any consequences. I just want to be a better person. Those people exist. I was never that.
No.
I very much got into recovery straight up because it was either that or lose my relationship. And I decided that for me, it was more authentic at the time to be able to choose my relationship. Now, the reality is that I also needed to choose myself and do a whole bunch of other things I wasn't aware of because of the state of mind I was in. Right. But at the end of the day, that's where the rubber met the road at the time, was just being real with, which is more authentic, because I can't, as my wife put it very eloquently, unfortunately, you just can't have both. You just need to decide which of these is more true for you.
Well, and I'll tell you what happened for me. I mean, I was caught up because of my religious upbringing, very much in the God aspect of this, right? It's immoral, it's wrong, it's evil, it's dirty, you're going to go to hell. I was caught up in a lot of that, and it caused me a great deal of shame, and tried to have that drive recovery for me for years, and it never worked. It just never did. It was grossly inadequate. I'll tell you what did work for me. So when I finally started to get really solid in recovery, here's why. I started to wake up to the fact that I was sick and tired of, in essence, having sex in my mind and in my fantasies with thousands and thousands and thousands of women. I was sick and tired of all of that, right? Playing the field, going into a public space and scanning and undressing people. And it basically ruled my life. And I got to where I was sick and tired of it, because what did I desire at the center place of my heart? I desired exclusivity. I wanted an intimate, close, loyal, bonded, best friend relationship with another human being. I longed for it. And in living life the way I was living it with my sexual outlets, that was not possible.
Yeah.
I couldn't do both. It's not possible. And I don't care what anybody says. I'll sit down with them all day long and say, you cannot have both of those that I just described.
Yep. Agreed.
So I just got sick of it. And I said, I want this close intimacy one-on-one with another human being. And I don't want to be distracted and pulled away by all these other thousands and thousands and thousands of, I'm going to call them relationships, because they are. They're not just images, they're relationships. The other side of that is my wife felt the same way. She says, you have the right to go have all these quote relationships and to indulge in all this, but I yearn to be exclusively with someone. I want to feel like I'm cherished. I want to feel like I'm the only one. I don't want to wonder when we're together intimately, which of the 500,000 women you've seen you're thinking about, or are you with me? Right? She also didn't want to have that, what would you call it? Fragmented relationship, right? She wanted to be all in, and I wanted to be all in. That's why I chose recovery, not because of a God issue.
Yeah, we hope that this helps, guys. There's lots to obviously say about this, and the good news is for this spouse and for lots of spouses out there in the same place. One of the many things that we teach on our Dare to Connect program is that you can get better whether or not your spouse chooses to as well.
Yeah.
Thankfully, recovery doesn't. Now the relationship's a different story. That does require both people working towards it, but you do not have to wait around and find hope and healing with them. That can be pursued on your own. One of the big questions we get with Dare to Connect is, can I join this, or should I join it if I'm only one half of a partnership? Our answer to that is a resounding yes. Absolutely. Whether you are attending the addicts group, the spouses group, or the couples group each week, or one of our support groups on the weekend, we offer 5 different sessions during the week. There is lots to be gained as a partner of an addict attending an addict session, just as much as there is a partner attending a partner session. You can pick up information and knowledge about them, about yourself, how this process works, look what addiction looks like, what healing looks like. You find a place of healing and support and recovery with other people who are going through the same thing. Our weekend support sessions are, frankly, we're getting gangbusters, awesome feedback from them. Being able to connect with other partners in the same position who can give you advice and real-time feedback on what's working for them and what's not, and all of that. I mean, those are things that are very hard to come by outside of something like that. We would love to have you guys come try that program. Do it for yourself. Don't wait for your partner. If they're not ready, oh well, that's okay. You are still worth recovery regardless of what they're choosing to do or to not. You can find more about getting a free 2-week trial on that. We have that going through the end of the year at daretoconnectnow.com. We'd love to have you guys join us over there. And if you have other questions that you would like addressed on the podcast, as we're moving into a holiday weekend here, you're welcome to email us. Well, not email us, but if you go to the podcast website, pbsepodcast.com, there's a contact form at the bottom there that you can send us questions, and we would love to briefly tackle those here, and hope to see you both on future podcasts and also in our Dare to Connect program.
Sounds great. Have a great rest of your week, a great holiday wherever you are in the world. Hope this time of year has joy and connection for you. And we'll see you next time on PBSE.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.